Welcome back to my new video, and today I'm doing a fanfic. If you want to read this fanfic for yourself, go in the description and there will be a link. So without further ado, make sure you subscribe, like and comment. So let's get into the video. Konohagakure no Sato was experiencing one of its greatest catastrophes since the first Hokage and Madara Uchiha found it. The kyuubi no Yoko had appeared in the village out of nowhere and began to destroy it, causing extensive damage and casualties. Hiruzen Sarutobi, aka the Sandaime Hokage, was organizing the troops that would take care of the kyuubi. He had planned a direct attack when the principal clans of the village would be the bait so that he can have time to summon Enko Enma to use one of the jutsu that made him the Shinobi no Kami. The jutsu was the hench Kongonyoi, and he intended to use it to pull the kyuubi away from the village to reduce the casualties damage but the fox was causing. Having everything ready, the Sandaime commanded the troops to carry the plan out. With the kyuubi away from the village, everybody thought that they could now make a better plan to contain the demon fox outside the village. It seems that everything was fine, until everyone felt a tremendous amount of chakra that came from the kyuubi. Turning around and looking up, they could see that the kyuubi was creating a giant chakra ball right in front of its snout. Hiruzen, who was aware of this technique, felt panic, but he could not show his weakness. He had to protect his village, so he gave new orders. Anyone who can use the earth element, step forward and use the Doton Doryonkei. We need to hold back that attack, or everything will be lost, the Sandaime said while other earth users began to use the jutsu. But it was too late since the kyuubi was about to throw the Bijudama. However, when everybody had thought that they would die, a huge toad appeared out of nowhere and fell upon the kyuubi, and a second later the kyuubi had disappeared from that place. Hiruzen, who was closer, could just think. Minato. Minutes before, the Yondaime Hokage had been in a fierce battle against a mysterious masked man. The strange man was powerful. However, it wasn't his power what worried him, but his final words, "I'll be back, and the kyuubi will be mine." And after that, the man disappeared into a swirling distortion. However, Minato could not worry about that now, since the kyuubi was still in his village and he had to protect it. He would not allow this to continue. He had to seal the kyuubi again, and he could only think of one thing that might work. Now, the Yondaime Hokage had transported the kyuubi to a place far away from the village, where the beast would cause no more damage. He disappeared in a yellow flash and reappeared in the same way. This time, a red-haired and very tired-looking woman, who carried in her arms 2 bundles wrapped in blankets of orange and black color, accompanying him. These people were Kushina Uzumaki, the wife of the Yondaime Hokage, Menma Uzumaki, and Naruto Uzumaki. They were their children, and both of them were blonde and had dark blue eyes. The Yondaime was exhausted, but he still had to seal the fox. Kushina realized what her husband had in mind because concerned. Therefore, chains made of chocolate came out of her back that coiled around the kyuubi, keeping him still. "Minato, you can't do this. If you do that, we'll condemn the lives of our children. Let me do this. I will take the kyuubi along with me, and I will delay his rebirth," Kushina pleaded with Minato. Minato didn't want to do this either, but he didn't know where the kyuubi could be reborn, and his rebirth would be much worse if anyone else caught him. Therefore, he placed a barrier around the area and told Kushina about his short battle with the mysterious man. "I understand," Kushina said after hearing all that. But she still was undecided. She knew that their children would have a hard life with much pain and loneliness if they did this, but she was confident that they could master this power and protect those who despised them. Then Minato continued with the ritual. He summoned 2 stones and placed both of the children there. Then he explained what he would do. Kushina, I used the Shinki Fusion to steal the kyuubi power in Mema, and the Hake no Fuin Shiki to steal the kyuubi's consciousness within Naruto. I trust in Sandaime-sama he will take care of our children, and he won't let anything bad happen to them. Minato stated as he did the seals to summon the Shinigami. He already knew that this would cost his life, but it was for the sake of the village and the elemental nations. The dead god was visible for Minato, so he continued with the ritual. Then a transparent blue hand came out from Minato's stomach, which headed to the kyuubi until it grabbed him. Minato extracted as much chakra as he could from him. It was about 95% of the kyuubi's total power, and he quickly sealed it inside Menma. But this was not over yet, so he quickly performed more hansen and shouted, Hake no Fuin Shinki! And he immediately sealed the rest of the kyuubi's power and consciousness inside Naruto. Done, an exhausted Minato said as he looked at the Shinigami. While he was waiting for his fate, he never realized that he was actually smiling. Therefore, when he thought that the Shinigami had spared his life, he turned around to see Kushina, who was not moving. He quickly ran to her, but it was too late, so he turned around again and furiously glared at the Shinigami. What did you do? Minato asked. But the Shinigami could not stop smiling. He raised his sword and pointed it to where his children were. Most specifically, to where Naruto was. Minato realized that his son began to convulsively while a red cloak surrounded him. He quickly ran toward him and tried to raise him, only to find out that it was like touching the asset. Therefore, he turned around to look to the Shinigami, but this time with an eye of hatred, only to find out he was gone. He turned around to see Naruto again, who was stopped moving, and the cloak of red chakra had disappeared. Minato panicked and picked his son up, only to find out that he was not breathing. He tried to do something, but then realized that it was too late. He cried on his chest as several Ambo along with the Sandaime arrived at the scene. The Sandaime had seen everything, and even though he couldn't see the Shinigami, he knew that Minato had summoned him. Nonetheless, he didn't know why Minato was still alive, so he asked himself what the Shinigami did. Therefore, he approached Minato, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered a few words. Minato, let's go back to the village, he said as gently as he could. He was also quite sad. This little creature didn't do anything wrong, and he had died. Minato turned around to try to say something, but he noticed that his son began to move. He thought it was just a case of catalepsy, but then he noticed something. His hair started to change to a red color, and his eyes turned red with vertical slit pupils. To say that Minato was scared would be an understatement. He was terrified. He thought that the kyuubi took possession of the body of his son, so unconsciously he dropped Naruto from his hand, and before he touched the ground, Hiruzen caught him. Minato's behavior surprised Hiruzen, who could ask Oni, what happened? Minato turned around as he looked at Naruto with hate. The kyuubi took possession of the body of my son, and he killed him. That is no longer my Naruto. He is a kyuubi. Hiruzen was in shock. He did not believe that something like this had happened. Minato knew he was irrational, and that he came to the conclusion very quickly, but how that had happened would not let them think clearly. Hiruzen thought that Minato had been just tired, so he said, Minato, I think you should rest, and we will see what happens to your son. Don't say such things. That might just be a side effect because you seal the kyuubi within your child. Maybe what Hiruzen had said was true, but Minato would not think clearly. He was mad with himself for not doing things properly. Mad because his wife died, and it seems that the Shinigami took her soul rather than his, and killed his son in the process. He raised his hand and pointed it at Naruto while saying, if that's true, why Menma wasn't affected? This statement took Hiruzen by surprise as he didn't know how to answer. Therefore, Minato let out a bitter laugh and continued. I already guessed it. That's not my son, not anymore. The kyuubi killed him and took possession of his body. If you want to worry about him, fine, do it. But I won't acknowledge that demon as my son. Take him out of here before I do something that I might regret. He wanted to kill him immediately, but if he did, I would be in vain. The kyuubi would be reborn again, and the masked man could catch him at that right moment, or even worse. The kyuubi could go into the body of his other son to possess him, as he did with Naruto. He turned around while taking Mem with him. After that, he looked to the front and faced Hiruzen. Gather the council. I have to tell them that what happened here, and we have to see what we will do with the demon. But remember, he's not my son. Minato maniacally said and disappeared in a yellow flash. Hiruzen, who had the child in his arms, saw him peacefully sleeping, so he gave him a loving look and thought, I hope that your foolishness doesn't cause regrets in the future, especially for you, Minato. Council chambers, 10 hours later. Many people had been gathered in the council chamber. There were the clan leaders of the village, the Hyuga, Nara, Uchiha, Akemichi, Aburame, Inuzuka, Sarutobi, and Yamanaka, with their respective main heads. Besides, there were the elders, Danzo Shimura, Homura Mitokado, and Koharu Utatane, and several civilian members. They didn't have any power and they were only there due to societal pressure. Many of them were murmuring the reason of why the Hokage assembled them while the others waited for the Hokage to explain the events of yesterday. Suddenly, the council door opened and all the conversation ceased. The Yondaime Hokage, who had a scowl, entered the council room and sat in his seat. He looked in the front and saw that everyone had confused expression on their face. So he decided to speak. As you already know, yesterday was the most terrible day in our village. The kyuubi attacked us, and it caused severe damage to our village, as well as numerous civilian casualties, and shinobi alike, he calmly said. Then he proceeded to tell everything that happened yesterday to his council, but omitting a few things, like the masked man who attacked him, the fact that he sealed the power of the kyuubi inside his son Mema, and of course, the fact that Naruto was his son, but not that he had sealed the kyuubi inside him. At the end of his tale, the civilian council members, together with some people of the shinobi council, clamored for the demon child's head before he lost control and killed everybody in the village. But before things got out of control, someone else spoke. Poor fools, said someone in the room. Everyone got silent and saw Danzo standing up from his seat. Many asked themselves what he had in mind, but Minato Hiruzen knew what he wanted to do. So he continued, Do you not understand? We could make of this child the greatest weapon that Konoha could ever have. With my training, he will protect this village and he will not be able to oppose to us, he murmured, and was about to continue, but Hiruzen decided to speak before he could. Danzo, we understand what you mean, but he is just a baby. We cannot consider him a weapon. We should just let him have a quiet life. And when he is old enough to enter the academy, we can send him there, and when he is ready, he will protect this village as a Konoha shinobi, not as a weapon. Hiruzen ended. Minato wanted to give Danzo the demon child, but he knew that he would use him as his personal weapon only, and that was something that he wouldn't accept. All his efforts and cushion sacrifice would be in vain. Then he took the floor and said, Sandaime-sama is correct. We cannot consider him as a weapon, at least not yet, and therefore, since the child has no parent, I will put him in an orphanage and the people from there will take care of him. Besides that, nobody can adopt him. I don't want that any one of you have him in your council and want to consider him as a weapon too. This meeting is over. Dismissed, Minato ended. He just wanted to stick a kune in the demon's head, but he could not do it. He'll have to endure his hatred for the sake of the village. With High Hokage-sama, the members began to withdraw except for Hiruzen and Minato. The first one gave his Hokage a sad look. You know very well that the words spoken here will expand through the village, Minato, and in no time everyone will know that he is the container of the kyuubi. You should. But before he could continue, Minato hit his deck abruptly as he spoke. He is not the container. He is the damn demon father that took possession of the body of my son. I should have him killed. But I cannot ignore the sacrifice of my son in Kushina. If the people of the village want to do something to him, fine then, I don't care. The demon won't die so easily. He won't want to leave this place too soon. Send one of your personal envoy if you want to protect him. But it cannot be more than one, he ended with a look of hatred, but not towards Hiruzen. Hiruzen just signed and turned around. Fine, but I hope you don't regret this decision in the future, he said, and then Hiruzen left the room as he called one of his envoy to protect the child. Meanwhile, Minato was still in the room with some thoughts. That damn demon, someday. I will discover how I can get rid of you, so that you can't come back to live again. And when that day comes, I will personally kill you. Then he stood up and disappeared in a yellow flash to go home. He still had a son whom he had to care for, and he could not fail this time. 5 years later, October 10. A 5-year-old boy with reddish hair and whisker marks on his cheek who looked rather scrawny was walking through the streets of Konoha as he asked himself, "What did I do? Why do the people hate me so much? Why do they always have to hit me on my birthday? Why no one wants to recognize me?" This boy was Naruto. He didn't have a surname, but he still was happy to have a name. He wondered if his parents also hated him, and if they just gave him a name to disappear later. He was tired of this village. He promised that one day he would make pay to each other of the inhabitants. No one showed compassion for him. So if he was to become stronger, he would not show any sympathy for those vile people. So he continued walking around the village, taking care not to run into drunks that abounded this day, or he would pay it dearly. He was hungry. The people from the orphanage had expelled him 2 years ago, and he only ate what was among the garbage from the restaurant and food stalls. He just wanted to have an ordinary birthday. Damn it, like those he saw the other kids having in the orphanage. However, they never celebrated one for him. They had always said, "Stupid demon, you don't deserve anything." Then they always ended up hitting him and giving him tiny portions of food. So after leaving the orphanage, he tried to steal some food to scoot his stomach a bit. Nevertheless, when the people saw him doing that, they beat him until they were satisfied, but it was well worth it. He could calm his stomach a little bit. He would be dead by now if it weren't for a supernatural being that lived within his body. But he was not aware of him, at least not yet. He was so deep in his life that he didn't realize that he entered an era where people were celebrating the victory of their beloved Yondaime Hokage against the kyuubi. One of those who were there noticed his presence and said, "Look what we have here. It's not other than the demon brat. I guess he came here to finish what he couldn't 5 years ago." They always told him that, but he didn't understand why they said that. The others who were with the man turned around and looked at Naruto with looks of hatred and malice. One of them said, "Today we'll get rid of this demon and become the heroes of this village." After saying that, he pulled a knife out and another group approached them as they surrounded Naruto, who panicked. "Who are they going to do to me?" Naruto asked himself. He had to run away from them and hide in one of his hiding spots. He was able to sneak away from them and started to run. However, those men would not let him get away easily, so everyone began to chase him. It was like a mob of 20 people who were pursuing him with all their speed. Naruto cursed himself. If he had been stronger, if he would have had more power, he thought that he should just stop praying and die at last. After all, if this were all his life was going to be, maybe he should stop trying. He began to shed tears from his eyes as he continued running. However, his legs were tiny and eventually those men would catch him. However, he couldn't surrender as quickly. He needed to keep trying, and that's why he thought the following: "I will never surrender." These bastards still have to pay. I only need to run and manage to escape from here. Damn it. I wish I were stronger. He ran so much that he reached one of the training camps out of the village. But unfortunately for him, he had stumbled, and the people were finally able to catch him. A man approached him and took him by his neck to stay. Stupid demon, you can't escape now. When we're done with you, we'll be the heroes of the village, and maybe we'll get paid for killing you. Naruto noticed that the breath of this man smelled like hell. It was obvious that he was drunk, but Naruto could not say anything because the man was grabbing him by his neck vigorously. Then the man threw him to the ground and proceeded to beat him hard. The other approached too, since they also wanted to do something to the demon brat. They would not let this man have all of the fun, so they started to kick him, throw stones at him, and the man who found him began to stab him in his legs. Naruto could do nothing. He was dying. Nevertheless, after a moment, Naruto realized that he was somewhere else. The place looked like a sewer, and it had leaks. Besides, he didn't feel any pain in this place except a burning sensation in his eyes. He thought he was in heaven, or maybe even hell. Then he heard a grunt, so he approached the place where he had that noise. When he arrived, he saw an enormous cage with a piece of paper with the word seal, so he got close to the cage just to hear something speaking. We finally meet, brat. I can see that you're having problems, the voice said. It sounded furious, but he realized that the anger was not directed at him. Thus, he approached towards him. Who are you? He asked. He wanted to know. This thing, whatever it was talking to him, and for once there wasn't hate in those words. The thing inside there spoke hoarsely. Who am I? That doesn't matter right now. The only thing that now matters is that you have to survive, brat. If you die, then I would die too, he replied. Naruto looked at him for a moment, but then he crossed his arms as he spoke. Unless you tell me who you are, I won't do anything. Besides, what can I do? Those men cut me, and I'm not strong enough to do something. I don't know what I can do, he finished clenching his fist. The kyuubi growled and looked at him. Fine then, I am the kyuubi no Yoko. But before you start with your questions, we need to survive. Don't worry about your wounds. I'll take care of that. You only have to take care of those bastards. I know that you come up with something. I'm sure of it. He ended with a smile. But Naruto couldn't have seen it since he was behind the bars and it was quite dark back then. He was surprised that he was the kyuubi. He thought that the Hyundai had killed him. Maybe he lived inside him, and maybe that was the reason for the hate toward him. However, it was not the time for questions. He had to survive first, and after that he could ask all the questions he wanted. Okay, can you do something? He asked. He also wanted to survive. He had to make everyone in this stupid village pay. Every one of them. The kyuubi looked at him and nodded. Don't worry, I have something covered. After that, Naruto disappeared from his mindscape and reawakened when most of the men had stopped hitting him. Many of them had satisfied look on their faces, but everything changed when they heard a growl coming from Naruto. So they turned around and one of them said, Well, it seems the demon won't give up. I think we should kill him conclusively. At the end of his speech, he pulled a knife out and proceeded to try and stab him in the heart. He approached him and he noticed some disturbing things. First, that his eyes were not reddish anymore. Rather, they were purple with a ripple-like pattern with a red cloak began to surround him. Hearing his wounds very fast, the man was scared. He tried to run away, but it was too late. Naruto stood up with a big grunt. All he wanted to do was to make these people who had caused him so much pain disappear. He didn't know what he was doing. He was not aware of his actions. He heard a few words in his mind and repeated them only. Shinra Tensei. Saying those words, things happened quickly. All those people were thrown and were crushed by a massive force. They could do nothing, and all of them ended up dead. After that, Naruto fainted while his eyes returned to normal, and while he rested in the center of the crater he made, meanwhile someone inside him smiled satisfactorily. This will be interesting for both of us, Naruto. He ended up with a wicked smile. In the distance, a man who was wearing a black robe and an unconventional mask had observed everything that had happened very carefully. Therefore, he thought, I must inform Danzo somehow about this. Then he disappeared in a puff of smoke. He left Naruto in that crater. The place was well away from the suburbs, and people would take long to find him. Hence, after he informed his master about what he saw, he would calmly pick him up from there. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more, make sure you subscribe and like. And if you hit, I'm also gonna make a 50 subscriber special. I'm not sure what I would do, but yeah. See you later, guys.